Hello and welcome to another episode of Sandy Killer Projects. Today we're going to be working on the 53-3100 frame. So to get started, I have to install the front crossmember because a lot of the suspension parts and stuff articulate off of this front crossmember. What I needed to do is mark the crossmember to center up with the original wheel centers location. So these marks here that I have are actually specifically for where the wheel lined up. Okay, in their instructions they're telling me it's got to be at like 18 and an eighth or something like that. The problem is mine is closer to 19. I'm going to put it at 19 because I'd rather the wheels fit into the opening where they originally were, not where the new crossmember is saying it is. Now, with all these 50s pickup trucks, everything is assembly line made, but when they're talking about these sorts of things, a lot of this car was handmade. These were hand riveted together, so the amount being off 7/8 of an inch really doesn't matter as long as I'm in the same place it was when it came off. So I'm going off of my number, not their number. So this is the first step in it. I had to notch out this part of the frame right here because the crossmember comes up and sits in between this. So now that this is notched out, I'm going to tack the crossmember into place, and once it's held into place, then we can start making all the rest of the changes that have to be made to get all the front end assembly parts on. Okay, so if you're watching the other videos on this, as I mentioned before, not a professional welder. These welds are not bad though. There's a big gap in here and I had to fill. This is now tacked in. Other side is also tacked in. I just want it heavily tacked in so that I can apply parts to it, make sure everything's got to go where it's going to go. Once we get back to tear down, I'll go through and I'll stitch this all in real nice and heavy so that it actually looks much prettier. So the next step is you need to mark 1 3/4 of an inch ahead of the front edge of the crossmember, because the upper spring pocket is going to fit right in here. So this piece, I want to try and clamp it into place. Not really a good way to do it, so I'm going to have to hold it while I weld it, at least to get it started. So the other thing that I had to do is I had to clean up in here. There was a bunch of built up grease from an old steering gear box that had been weirdly welded in. And then I had to clean up down here as well because there was also more grease buildup. So I had to grind it all off, clean it all down, and then remark my 1 3/4 mark. So now I'm going to set that spring pocket on here and I'm going to tack it in fairly heavily like I did with the other one. So now that that front spring pocket's in, I'm going to do the same thing over here. I've already got an 1 3/4 mark. I'm going to set the spring pocket here. I'm going to grind out the section where it's got to sit so that I get a clean surface to weld to, and then I'll hold it in place and tack it in. Alright, I've got both spring pockets installed on both sides. The next thing that has to happen, because I have power steering set up on this, it wants me to make a mark depending on which style rack I have, either the later model one or the earlier model one. I'm not sure. I bought this kit well over a year ago. I'm not sure which kit is in it. So it wants me to use these marks and make a pretty little radius up and around, which, I mean, I'd love to be able to do that, but it's far easier and makes far more sense to put a box in here. So I'm going to cut this guy out here, and then it's going to go all the way through to the other side of the frame, and then I'm going to plate inside of here. So that's what my C-notches are going to look like. I'm going to see how they come through the other side. One of the things that kind of sucks about this is I'm about 1/4 of an inch short of the end of the plate. I didn't think I need these to go as far. Just for aesthetics, it's going to look a little goofy because there's going to be a box sticking into this opening coming down. Also, because it's kind of odd looking the way it is, I'm probably going to end up clearancing this off and just making it flat, continuing the weld all the way through. Same thing on the other side. I actually do match up at the end on the end of this hole, and I will probably end up removing this little section right here and then welding flat across. So for filling in this C-notch, I had to make some plates, custom fit, to go across the bottom of this and catch that other side of that other plate so that we fill in the C. So I'm going to end up welding those across on both sides. The one problem is because this plate doesn't come far enough out, it doesn't cover and hide it like I'd like to. I'll have to figure something out on that one afterwards. But after I get this plate up and in and welded, I'm going to make a couple little plates for this other side. I'm probably going to use some thinner gauge metal because I have some 1/8 inch, which gives me more width across, which is more what I'm concerned with, so that the arm for the power steering mechanism fits through here properly and doesn't get bound up on anything. All right, so the point where I'm at here, the upper plate's tacked in, the forward plates are tacked in. These are only 1/8, this is 3/16. They're just tacked into place so that I have a reference for where everything's going to go. I'm going to, once everything's said and done, go through and clean everything up, weld stitches all the way around this so that it's completely locked in. And then on the inside, it's going to end up looking something like this. And I'll put some welds and stuff on the inside to make sure it stays there. And hold this all in and all the way around the other side, just so that it's part of the frame now. But at this point, tacked in is all I need. This is all just for assembly. I may end up going through putting a few more tacks on the crossmember and the control arm pockets. But the next thing that has to happen is the supplied holes in the lower crossmember are if you're going to use the torsion bars that came with it. So I got to drill these out to 5/8. Once I open them up, then I've got to weld a bushing in here and a bracket and bushing on here, and then we can start assembling the front end. So after these holes get opened up to 5/8, you have to drive this one into the middle here. They set this overly tight, so you've got to open it up if you run into the same situation as I did. But this needs to get welded in all the way around. I'm just going to put some tacks on it. This flange is going to sit horizontally in the back and get welded in place like that. And then once that's done, you can start installing parts. So from here you can see I've tack welded the tubes in. Now the A-arm, lower control arm, has to go up into place, and the bushings are in the way, so I got to push the bushing backs on either side and then set that bolt back through it to get the A-arm to sit in its home location. Right now everything's still hot. I don't want the rubber to touch anything for too long, so I'm going to let it rest for a little bit. So as you can see, there are quite a few boxes that go into installing the front end. Not every one of these is going to go up right now. Right now we're going to do the lower control arms, the upper control arms, and the spindles. The reason why is because we want to see where the spindle is going to sit in relation to that mark that I have, to make sure that our wheels are where they're supposed to be. But these are all the boxes for what's going to go on, and those two over there. So we have the lower control arms, the spindles, brake assemblies, coils, shocks, rotors, engine mounts. That is the rack and pinion, and that is the sway bar. So this is everything that installs the front end. But for now we're going to be dealing with these two boxes and the lower control arms I already have. Alright, so here it is mocked up. Everything on here at the moment is loose, so I can actually move everything around. But what I wanted to see, and the reason why I'm mocking this up, I need to make sure that when everything is in the centered up position, in just like basically like its home spot, the center spindle matches up with the line for where the wheels originally sat. And as you can see, it does. The other thing I still need to do is I want to set the rack and pinion on and make sure that the arms are going to come through that opening. Once that's done, I'm going to take everything back off and I'm going to weld everything all up. Alright, so I have the rack and pinion just loosely sitting on here. This is the rest of the hardware for the back of it. But when you bring it all the way up, as you can see, it doesn't really fit evenly into the opening that it's supposed to, and the boot is rubbing on the bolt for the lower control arm. I don't really like this setup. These 3/4 inch spacers don't really seem to be enough. It looks like if I bring it out 1/4 to 1/2 inch, I'm going to be able to get that to fit right where it's supposed to and not have it rubbing on the boot. So they gave me an extra set of bushings for it. One way I could do this is I can cut this down to the size that I need, which is roughly the width of this flange right here. Or the other option is I can get some more washers like this and stack it out. Or I need to find like a 1 inch or 1 1/8 spacer to put into here, because otherwise if I were to mount it in the home location that it's got right here, it's going to drag on the lower control arm, and it's not really going to fit in this opening. So most likely I'm going to end up making something, getting something just to stand this out a little bit more. Otherwise I have to open this opening, and then there's no way to change that lower control arm position. So stacking it out a little further would work. Plus the bolts are very long and basically run into the back of the opening down here. So it actually would make more sense to have some space in there. So I now know my openings and stuff will work, but I'm going to have to make some modifications to the mount for this rack and pinion. As you can see, I've taken it back down to the frame, and I've started to weld things on. So the upper spring pockets are now stitched in, and as you'll notice, there's a bunch of little spatter bits. It's because I'm using shielded MIG wire, and when you do that, it has a tendency to splatter. It does come back off, but you have to sit there and scrub it all off. Maybe even some light sanding to get it to come loose. But this spring pocket is in. I've got the cross member welded front and back. I've also reinforced some of the welds on the plating up along the top. Same thing over here. This one's in, upper spring pocket's in, reinforced welding along the top. I've got a bunch more to do, so I've still got to get the underside of the cross member, and then I've got to get these spacer bushings for the control arm, the lower control arm, welded all the way around also, which would also put a weld up on the back here. And once all of this is welded in and complete, then we'll start reassembling, and we'll put the things in a more permanent position. Everything will still get put in pretty loose, but it'll be set to where it looks more ready to run. At this point, all the welding is completed on all parts of this assembly. So the next thing that's going to end up happening is reassembly that we've already seen get put together. It's going to go together basically complete. There are going to be some areas I'm not going to tighten because of the fact that they don't need to be until we set the wheels on the ground. But as you can see, everything is done. Openings for the rack and pinion and welded and smoothed off to make sure that they don't rub on the boots or mess anything up. Everything's welded all the way around so that it stays in place once we put all the suspension and the weight of the car on it. So we're back with the upper and lower control arms assembled with the spindles. So the difference between this and the last time it was mocked up is we've actually tightened up the bolts that hold the upper and lower control arms in. The spindle is set. Everything is still in snug, not tight, not torqued down. I'm going to have to break this upper assembly back loose, install the shocks in the spring. So it's necessary to kind of keep everything just a little bit loose. Mostly I needed to mock up the upper control arm position so that I knew where it would sit with the spindle sitting flat, which when I loosely mocked it up, that wasn't really something I was looking for. Now that I have everything in it a little bit more set, these can be locked down. All right, so it's starting to come together. As you can see, I have the shocks in place. Everything is now put together. Coils are on. I also have the bracket for the brakes to mount onto here. All right, now what I want to talk about is that seems like I've done almost nothing. I've only put on a couple things, but you got to remember, even though this is a kit that's designed to go on this car, everything is built custom, so everything is a little bit off. Things need adjusted, things need set. Give you a perfect example. On the lower control arm on the driver's side, there's supposed to be a collar on here, and in the process of them welding it up, they ended up taking the collar off, and now this bolt sticks out just a hair. Okay, so if we look at the other side, this is where the little collar is. It runs into that, and that's what gives it its final position. This A-arm just happens to be a hair shorter than the other one. So to get the shock to fit, I ended up having to clearance this part of the mount to get it to fit into there. So it may seem like I've only done maybe 15-20 minutes worth of work, but I've been working on this for an hour or two. Everything, when you're building a custom truck like this, goes very, very slowly. Even though you put things on, take them off, put things on, take them off, it all takes time. So everything is set as far as it can go at this point. The next thing we're going to do is start installing the brakes, get them all set, and then it'll just keep moving along. All right, so everything is close. We have the rotors and calipers on. Didn't put the brakes, didn't put the brake lines. I know that the brake lines are going to come off of the caliper and go back to the original stock mount, which is sitting here, and I have some clips and stuff for him to install them on. I don't need to put those on to get everything up and rolling. I don't even need brake pads in here because we just want to be able to roll the car in and out. So I also put on the power steering rack with the tie rod ends on each side. The 3/4 inch spacers didn't work. I needed a 0.29 more, so I'm probably going to end up making a spacer that's about an inch. That gets it evenly into the pockets and off of the bolts in the back. You can see better from the passenger side. We actually line up with everything where we're supposed to be. And then also everything is set up on the other side as well. So as you can see, none of my cotter pins are locked. There's a reason for that. We're going to end up disassembling all this stuff after we get it up and running and send this to the powder coater. So everything is just set kind of close at the moment. So I still have to install the sway bar. There are no mounts on the bottom of this, so I have to find a location where it mounts up with this anchor and mount it in. At this point, the front end is completed. I have things set kind of loose. The sway bar is mounted just on so that it's holding in place. When you build these things, everybody thinks like it's going to be like you're just putting on some aftermarket part that slaps in. This is a completely custom build. Parts have to come on and come off a dozen times to make sure they're straight. I ended up having to take the rack back out of it to make room for me to drill the holes, and there was a piece of metal under the center that I ended up having to cut out. That was something that somebody previously had put on. But in the process of doing this, every one of these parts went on, came off at least a half a dozen times. So don't think that you're just gonna put this thing together and it's just gonna go on and instantly work. This is hours and hours and hours worth of work. I've probably got maybe 16, 20 hours in setting, adjusting, assembling, welding, all this front end assembly. And for right now, it's just gonna stay like that because our next video, I'm gonna be working on the back end because I've got a rear end that's sitting over there that's gotta get installed and all the assembly for it. So as always, thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll keep making more content.